Government bills, second reading debate to resume consideration by Committee of the Whole Council and third reading. Firearms and Ammunition Amendment Bill 2025. Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the Firearms and Ammunition Amendment Bill 2025. Unlawful manufacturing of firearms is not something far away from Hong Kong. I'd like to raise two examples. In court proceedings, we see that in cases related to black-clad violence, a number of offenders, through illegal manufacturing of firearms, they created huge social incidents and caused fatalities in Hong Kong. Second example, in a police operation, it cracked down on a illegal or criminal syndicate that has to do with illegal dealing in firearms, and a lot of component parts were seized. There are evidence showing that the component parts were manufactured in Hong Kong and were then exported or transported to other places. From these two examples, we see that illegal manufacturing of firearms and ammunition exist in Hong Kong, and there are evidence showing that it's quite active. To implement the firearms protocol under the UN Convention is not just an obligation to facilitate international cooperation and law enforcement, but it is also to prevent the diversion of these illegal firearms into the illegal circuit. I remember that the Secretary for Security at the relevant panel said under the current FAO, there are provisions to regulate the illegal manufacturing of firearms, but in terms of cross-border trafficking in firearms, there are no provisions to regulate that under the existing legislation. So it is necessary to amend the existing ordinance. During the discussion at the panel on security, I raised two concerns. First, I asked whether the relevant legislative amendments would cause any adverse impacts on activities held by shooting clubs or their members. These shooting clubs, of course, have obtained the licenses. However, this is for sports competitions, but they may have to modify their guns for sports competitions, and they may inadvertently breach the law. Therefore, during the discussion, I asked the Secretary as well as the shooting clubs to talk to each other. After the clarification of the administration, we realized that the relevant amendments will not affect adversely the shooting clubs, and the amendments instead will protect the shooting clubs so that they won't breach the law inadvertently. I raised another question about illegal manufacturing of firearms. I asked about the underlying technologies of manufacturing component parts, because 3D printing is rather cheap and it's quite common. In police operations, we see that those who illegally manufacturing component parts of firearms, they hide in their homes to do that, or they rent a place in industrial buildings to do so. So we must enhance risk management. We have to adopt a risk-based approach to collect evidence, for example. Otherwise, it will be very hard for us to catch these offenders. I hope that after the passage of this bill, the police will target any obscure illegal manufacturing of firearms. The police should also pay attention to any online websites that teach people how to modify guns or firearms. Where necessary, the administration should ask the relevant websites to remove the content. Otherwise, illegal manufacturing of firearms will remain a serious issue. Lastly, I think the administration should do one thing. The Secretary should encourage citizens to report any crimes. I recently noticed a case. There is a person at the MTR station who was carrying a replica firearm, and through the CCTV footage, the police managed to track the person who was carrying the replica firearms. This shows the importance of cooperation of the police as well as members of the public. Through smart enforcement, the police can currently, through CCTV footage, effectively combat such crimes and prevent such crimes. So I'd like to take this opportunity to ask the police to implement the CCTV installation scheme as soon as possible. The scheme should be expanded to the relevant public organizations. I hereby support the amendment bill, and I hope the government will, as soon as possible, prosecute cases concerning illegal manufacturing of firearms and ammunition, and also concerning the websites that teach people how to modify illegal firearms, they should be removed. Any other members who wish to speak?
If not, I now call upon the Secretary for Security to reply, then the debate will come to a close. Secretary. President. President. I would like to first thank Mr. Chen Haken for speaking and his support for the Firearms and Ammunition Amendment Bill 2025 during the second reading debate earlier. The purpose of the bill is to implement locally the requirements of the Protocol against the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms, their parts and components and ammunition, supplementing the UN Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. To demonstrate our full implementation of the Firearms Protocol, we propose amending the Firearms and Ammunition Ordinance to establish new offenses prohibiting the manufacture or cross-border trafficking of firearms, components, and ammunition for purposes other than business or trade. Additionally, we propose amending the ordinance to establish new offenses prohibiting the manufacture of firearms, components, and ammunition using illegally trafficked components. Firearms are deadly weapons. Given the seriousness of the illicit manufacture and cross-border trafficking of firearms, components, and ammunition, as well as the threat they pose to public safety, we believe it is necessary to establish penalties with sufficient deterrent effect for the relevant new offenses. Therefore, we propose to increase the penalties for the offenses of illicit manufacturing of firearms and cross-border trafficking of firearms to twice the current penalties for the offense of operating a firearms business without a license, with a maximum prison term of 20 years and a fine of 200,000 Hong Kong dollars. In addition, we recommend amending the ordinance to prescribe the marking requirements of the Firearms Protocol and make the falsification or illegal obliteration, removal, or alteration of firearm markings a criminal offense. For the relevant offense, we recommend a maximum penalty of 2 years imprisonment. We also propose that the ordinance empower the Commissioner of Police to prescribe detailed technical requirements for markings by way of subsidiary legislation. We will publish relevant subsidiary legislation in the Gazette and submit it to the LegCo in July this year after the amended ordinance comes into effect. Regarding the legislative proposals, we would like to thank the industry and the LegCo panel on security for the support expressed during the consultation period in February, following the introduction of the bill into the Council for its first reading. I would like to thank the House Committee for supporting the resumption of the second reading debate on the bill in April. Here, I would like to also thank the LegCo Secretariat and the legal advisor for their efforts in facilitating the efficient and smooth scrutiny of the bill. President, if the bill is passed by the LegCo today, we will immediately publish the amended ordinance in the Gazette on 6th of June to bring it into effect. Subsequently, we will promulgate subsidiary legislation setting out the detailed requirements for markings in July and submit it to the LegCo for negative vetting. The provisions of the ordinance relating to marking requirements will take effect simultaneously with relevant subsidiary legislation. President, I implore members to support the Firearms and Ammunition Amendment Bill 2025 to implement the requirements of the Firearms Protocol in the city. I so submit. Thank you, President. And I put the question to you that the Firearms and Ammunition Amendment Bill 2025 be read the second time. With those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion pass. Firearms and Ammunition Amendment Bill 2025. This council now becomes committee